Good afternoon. I would like to thank you all for coming today. We appreciate the media affiliates for relaying information to the residents of the city of Goshen and the surrounding area. I'm Assistant Chief Police Jose Miller with the Goshen Police Department. In a moment, Chief Wade Branson will deliver a statement, and upon his conclusion of the statement, he's going to answer a few questions that you may have. We thank you for your patience this week as we continue to release information as it becomes available. Chief Branson.
Welcome and thank you for coming. In the early morning hours of Sunday, October 9th, officers of the Goshen Police Department were dispatched to 1736 Wildwood Court in reference to initial call of robbery in progress. The initial 911 call had been received by the Elkhart City Dispatch Center and was relayed to Elkhart County Communication Center, which is the agency who dispatches emergency personnel in Goshen. The two homeowners, Mr. James Miller and Mrs. Linda Miller, were both home at the time of the incident. Mrs. Miller stated that she was first to be attacked by the intruder with an unknown object. During this time, her husband became involved in the attack. Mrs. Miller was able to move away from the intruder and call 911 for assistance. Our midnight shift was dispatched at 1:06 a.m. and the first officers arrived at the scene by 1:08 a.m. The suspect had fled the scene prior to our arrival. Officers made entry into the home where Mrs. Miller was located. While some officers were continuing to survey the home and search for the suspect, officers with Mrs. Miller called for Goshen paramedics to aid with her injuries. Mrs. Miller was transported to the IU Health Goshen Hospital and later transferred to South Bend Memorial Hospital for additional treatment. At some point during the attack, Mr. Miller, or immediately following Mr. Miller, exited his home. Mr. Miller was discovered outside the residence, lying on the ground in the street near the resident's mailbox. Mr. Miller, 58 years of age, suffered fatal injuries as a result of the attack and was pronounced dead at the scene. As aid was being given to Mrs. Miller, additional officers were called in immediately to assist in the search for the suspect, secure and maintain the scene, and continue the investigation of the incident and cover for regular patrol on the streets. In the hour and days since we first received the call, our officers continue to process the scene, collect evidence, follow leads, interview persons who have come forward with potential pertinent information, and work with Mrs. Miller to create a composite sketch and compile identifying details of the suspect. We have expended hundreds of man-hours and utilized every available resource in this investigation. We will continue to assign every available officer for patrolling our neighborhoods, and the detectives assigned to this case will continue to pursue the investigation. I would like to take a minute and express my appreciation to the Indiana State Police, the Elkhart County Sheriff's Department, Elkhart City Police Department, and other local agencies for their invaluable assistance on and since Sunday. There's a great relationship between the agencies in the area, and as soon as the magnitude of this incident was made known, each agency immediately offered their assistance, and my department and I are extremely grateful. Everyone is anxious for closure in the investigation of this horrific crime, but we are also human. We would like to express our condolences to the family during this time of grief and incredible sadness that the Miller family is living with today. Our thoughts are with them each day as they live with their loss. By way of press release, we have provided as much information as we have available for release. We are certain that this composite and suspect description will prove vital to discovering the identity of the Miller's assailant. We ask that anyone with information or knowledge regarding this case or the identity of the suspect to please contact the Goshen Police Department or the Michiana Area Crime Stoppers. We encourage our fellow residents now, as always, to follow personal safety practices such as locking your doors and windows and leaving your exterior lights on and reporting any suspicious activity. You know your neighborhoods and your neighbors. If someone or something looks out of place, calls for assistance. We are here for the residents of Goshen. I will try to answer a few questions if you have them, but remember, it's an ongoing investigation, so some of the questions you asked, I probably won't be able to answer. Sheila,
Do you have any suspects or persons of interest at this point?
we have no suspects at this point.
Any persons of interest?
We are interviewing several individuals.
Many people have pointed to the resemblance between the sketch of the suspect and a gentleman named Chad Weddle who was arrested in connection with some burglaries. Is that someone that you are looking into? Can you elaborate?
That is an individual that we interviewed, but the more press you guys give him as a suspect, then everyone's gonna think he's the person that did it. We have interviewed him.
Have you looked into any connection with the unsolved murders of the Tarwacki couple in Niles, Michigan?
We know about that information, and I know our detectives has talked to Niles about that case.
Is there any indication of whether this was a random incident or targeted?
I can't answer that at this time.
Should people living in the community, though, still be concerned that a killer is on the loose?
Until he's arrested, I would say yes.
The suspect fled on foot. Is there any indication he lived anywhere nearby? Have you looked through the neighborhood?
There's no information that we can say we know he fled on foot at least from the house.
Has Mrs. Miller looked at suspect lineups, photo lineups?
Yes, she has.
Has she identified Chad Weddle as a possible suspect or the possible person who was inside her home?
No, she has not.
Have you defined where the suspect got into the house?
I'm not going to answer that question at this time.
Do you have any idea how Mr. Miller ended up outside during the attack? Can you kind of walk us through what you guys believe happened inside the home and how
He was in a struggle with the perpetrator. How they got outside, I'm guessing they fought their way out that way.
Do you think it was just one person?
At this point, we believe it's just one person.
Were the doors of the home unlocked and the lights on inside when the suspect entered?
I'm not going to answer that question at this time.
Around the neighborhood, other homes reported somebody trying to get into doors. That's the talk around the neighborhood. Is there any truth to that?
There were some reports of someone maybe knocking on doors or in their area, but no one got broke into in that area.
How many tips and leads have you received up to this point? I mean, hundreds?
Numerous.
That concludes our question and answer portion of this press conference. There's going to be copies available of the chief's statement that he released, I believe, by the door back there. Please direct any other questions you may have to our public email address at police@goshencity.com. Now, the Mayor, Alan Kaufman, would like to say a few words to the community.
Well, first of all, I want to express my condolences to the family and the friends of the family and the Goshen College community with which he was so close. When something like this happens, it's an assault not only on the victim but on a whole community. And I want to express my complete faith and support in our police department. I know that and the agencies that they're working with, I know that when something like this happens, they take it very personally because they feel just as much ownership of this community as anybody who lives in it. And so I can confirm that they are working around the clock to try to solve this. And I know folks are disappointed that they couldn't announce today that the person was caught. But they are still following leads and they are still looking. They have recommended that people take precautions, and we want people to be safe. We don't want people to live in fear in Goshen. But this is a lesson that even in a relatively low-crime community, things like this can happen. And so common sense things like keeping your doors locked and not making it easy for somebody. We know that even in smaller communities than this, there are people that are desperate for one reason or another, whether it's a drug habit or a gambling habit or feeding their family or whatever. We don't even know the motive of the break-in yet, but